Hi, Nikki. Hi, Nikki. Um, I think Jen is the only one other signed up, so we'll see if we have
Okay,
any people. I'll give them a few more minutes. Yeah.
sure. Yeah. How are you this morning, Shelley?
I'm good. My daughter's with me, so I'm gonna spend some
Oh,
time with her this afternoon, this morning.
oh,
Yeah.
that sounds nice.
Yeah.
Is she, how old is she?
She's gonna be 18 on the 15th
Okay.
of
All
April.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Is she still in high school?
No, she is gonna get her GRE. Is that a G?
GED?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm so
Yeah.
used to saying the GRE for school.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're hoping that she'll get that done.
Cool. Yeah,
She's
I was just wondering if she was on spring break this week or something.
Yeah, no, we had our spring break. Naropa did last week, and then
Yep.
the week before that, I was off from UNT Dallas. So
Okay.
yeah, it was nice, to have only
Have a
one.
couple weeks.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
but I guess you had to be at UNT Dallas last week, right? So
yeah.
you didn't really get a spring break.
We're still virtual. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have classes Monday and Tuesday nights, but I've
Okay.
got us down to meet for class tonight.
This
So it should,
evening, right? Yeah.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
good.
I'll be right back. I'm gonna go grab some tea. I'll
Mm,
be right back.
mhm. So make sure I'm recording it. It's just when you came on,
Uh-huh. Oh, I can't hear you.
yeah, yeah. Did you see that it was being recorded when you came
Yes.
on?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, okay. So, did you get a chance to read that book, Many Moons?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that book. Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing here. Previous. I did use, an actual client instead of doing that. I felt like I just didn't have enough information, but we got,
There wasn't a lot of information that I got from the many moons either. It's
yeah.
trying to make a full conceptualization out of it. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen. Just see if anyone's. don't see anyone that's emailed me, so I guess, is it 9? Yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started. Um, the way that I made these slides out are kind of go right along with what your written part would be fairly accurately. There might be some things that I added in these that, in your written case conceptualization, there's not a really good match between, your written guidelines and then the case conceptualization guidelines that were in the class. So I went back to the written part, and these slides are kind of going along with that. So, just kind of, you want to do an introduction to your site and your client. Let me just, I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to stop sharing and kind of try to do somebody's case conceptualization. And let me see if I can do that with. Okay, so,
Jen?
Hi.
yeah, I can. Did your stuff come back on?
Yeah, it's because I didn't hit OK for the record thing because I'm on two screens and I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Let me get my dog. So let me see. I believe. Okay, so I wanted to kind of let me exit show, and I'll just kind of show these side by side, so you can see, mine, but you can also see another student's. And let me see if I want to get rid of that. Can I? No. Okay, so one of the things that I like you to do in the case conceptualization is actually to do like the space where you're at. So if you do an introduction of your site and your client, this student over here made a, kind of a drawing of her office and, where stuff was. So here she is in her office there, and she's got some books and stuff. And, a lot of us are still working from home. So that's her home address, office. And then she kind of put the stuff in her home. So if you're working from home, or if you just want to give us like a picture image of your site, and then, share a few details of your site with us, just to remind, the group of where you are doing your practicum. So, just having the extra, picture in there will kind of make it more interesting. Then, okay, so on ours, we have, oh, gee, sorry. um, I just okay, there. So then the demographics. So this is one that I had worked on. Lindsay Lohan is a 30-year-old Caucasian American, cisgendered, heterosexual female. She is single and never been married. She has blonde hair, blue eyes, identifies as spiritual but not religious. And so you can see that from here, there was some type of assessment done, to get that religious and some of that other information. So if you've done a cultural formation interview, or if you use the addressing model where you assess for different variables of culture, have either of you guys done that? No. Okay.
I haven't.
So yeah, if you do you feel like you can do the demographics from what you've worked with them? I'm sure.
I mean, for the most part, I don't know, in one of my clients, I'm going with what they share, and they haven't shared much about religion or spirituality. So I'm just having to kind of take what I can.
Yeah, and that's fine. You know, lots of times when people write psychologicals or they write like a case conceptualization for a case meeting, you know, there's information that hasn't been shared. So, you know, that's a reality. And, you know, especially even working in like a big hospital, sometimes you get kind of sketchy information and it might be inaccurate too. So, you know, it's good. I like that, Nikki, you're kind of staying with the client and what they're sharing with you.
The other thing that's hard, I don't mean to take up time here, but the other thing that's hard is just over telehealth. It's kind of hard to gather some of this information. I mean, I could say that my client comes in appropriately dressed and,
Yeah,
looks well groomed, and I can see her from here up.
yeah,
So, you know,
yeah.
some of it's a little hard over just telehealth. I'm sure everybody knows
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I did supervise a student whose client, you know, was laying in bed
Mhm.
most of the session. And some of the issues that, you know, they were dealing with was some I think it was pornography addiction, but something that just, you know, it didn't feel right for the client to be in bed like that while she was counseling. So, you know, that was one client where we asked, you know, to be up in front of the camera. But yeah, a lot of, even with people that I counsel, you know, relatively frequently will sometimes, you know, turn the camera so that you only see the top of their head, that kind of thing. And really, you know, I think the same thing about staying with your client, that you would kind of honor that they want to stay out. Um, so physical status, this is kind of what you were talking about, Nikki. It's sometimes really hard to judge over the internet. Um, you know, any medical conditions there that you can list, and then difficulty with sex. I'm going to back over here and see if we've got, okay. So yeah, she didn't really introduce her client very well. So, and you know, over the objective view of the client, the physical status, and the demographics, you can actually use one slide and put all of those on. I'm just kind of on this one, I'm taking it word from word from my written document just so that you'll see the detail. um, you know, for your PowerPoints, I'd rather you not like read from them. So if you make like bullet points on the slides, and then you can kind of in a conversational tone, share the conceptualization with us. We'll be in our group face to face. So just kind of put the little bit of, you know, interaction with the audience, so you're not just reading the slides. Okay, so just some other things, physical status, and then your objective view. You know, do they maintain eye contact? They speak at you know, a regular rate, leaning forward while speaking. You know, are they doing something else, like, you know, playing on the phone, if you can tell, that kind of thing. Again, you know, it's hard when we're not face to face. And the education, I would probably put, I'm going to just move this one down here. There. Okay, so the education is still kind of talking about the background. So just, and why might the education be an important factor sometimes with our clients? Um, I don't know if you've experienced it at all with your Gestalt clients for class, but just the countertransference. Like if you're counseling in the counseling clinic and you're counseling another student, that might just lead to the potential for some issues there. So, um, then on the other end, if your client's only reading at like a sixth or seventh grade level, you need to make sure that, your language matches that, but also any written material matches that. And Word actually has a way to determine the reading level of like your handouts, papers, that kind of stuff. So if I send out flyers or if I have something in my office as literature, I just make sure it's like at a 7 grade level. Okay, so the objective view, and then I guess we can keep moving that down. But personal and social data, how does the client describe, what's going on with them socially? Um, she's presented here with low self-esteem. She's dissatisfied with her job. She does enjoy watching Netflix, being friends and romantic partners. And she came wanting to work on her self-esteem to become more adventurous. She just likes being alone, fears being unloved, and believes she's unworthy of love. And then I want you to find, an asset or a strength. So her strengths include a high level of engagement with a therapist, high introspection and self-awareness, and that she's motivated. So you can do that on, this slide here, or you can break it out. I think down below here, I kind of broke it out someplace. Yeah, there you go. So assets are client strengths. So you can include that up in the other area. One thing that happens, like I said, is that like when you're writing a case report and presenting it, sometimes things, things will change order. So that was why I had assets down here under assessment data. So let's go back up here. Okay, and then so personal, social, education, and then home and family data. She's living in a not so safe part of town, strained relationship. When she found out her mother was not her biological mother, she felt sad. Okay. Yeah, so any questions so far? That's just kind of the description of your client.
I'm just wondering, Shelley, is it okay if we kind of organize this material in a different way where maybe the home and social setting and where it's not spread out in that way, but maybe we concisely introduce it together? Or do
Yeah,
you want
this
it
is,
spread out like
yeah,
this?
yeah, let me see if I can get this one to get up. See, so this student kind of put it all on one, just kind of family background, hobbies, mental history. So you can do that all on one slide. That would be fine. And then education, legal history. So yeah, that's fine if you want to put it all on one place. And then we kind of are leading up to the reason for a referral. And this student, or this client was not necessarily aware of the problem with alcohol. So it started out that, she's struggling more with self-esteem, codependency, people pleasing, and developing stronger coping skills. But as the sessions went on, alcohol also became, an issue. And that was something that, you know, as a clinician, when you're seeing it and asking questions, and that comes up a lot, you kind of go back and might want to change the diagnosis or add something to it. So, it wasn't a presenting problem when she came, but it became one. Multicultural considerations and also any safety considerations. So this client didn't describe any events of racism, etc. You might go into the differences between you and the client, and then some pitfalls that you might run into, like if you're counseling a parent and you're not a parent yourself, if they bring that up, something like that. If you're counseling a Hispanic woman and the difference, there seems to be something maybe just kind of not aligning right. Go ahead and investigate that on your own, and then come back to the session. And and I like to kind of self-disclose with the client that we do have these differences, and when well, I don't understand the way that you experience society. That is one thing I really want for you to do, and for me to be able to see the world through your eyes. And then the safety considerations might be if you're working with a child, CPS, child abuse, the consent for therapy, like who has consent for therapy for the child. With adults, it might be intimate partner violence. There might be your client's been referred through the legal system. So just kind of think about those ethical and legal things. And I don't think I added that anywhere. Okay, I'm just going to add it in here for us. Is that about it? Oh, and safety. Okay. So then if you have any assessment data, you can include it here. A lot of times, we might not have a formal assessment, but try to do an assessment, from what your observations have been. And the assessment here doesn't necessarily need to lead to a DSM-5 diagnosis, but just your assessment of what the client might be showing. So, in our case, there was no formal assessment done, but she shows many symptoms for anxiety and depression. And a theme throughout the therapist sessions with the client has been the client's inner belief that she is unworthy of love. The client has maintained sobriety over the 30 days, and she's learning about massage therapy and developing a routine. So this kind of assessment came later in the sessions where, we could see that there was the depression. We kind of identified one of the core beliefs being that she was unworthy. And then again, the statement about the drinking. And then we want to try to understand the client in terms of your theory. So, my theory is person-centered. So I'm going to talk about the relationship that I have with the client, and that I'll stay with the client in terms of, being patient, believing that they have what it needs to answer their own questions. So, kind of relational considerations based on my theory. So, if you're CBT or REBT, DBT, you're going to relate more in a directive manner where you're teaching psychoed skills for coping. you're dealing with symptom reduction. And so here's what we had written with, you want to understand the nature of problems. And again, kind of the presenting problem, something else might come up. And so before we really wanted to diagnose her with alcohol use disorder, we wanted to go in and just spend more time with her. So the core conditions and person-centered, congruence, accurate, empathetic understanding, and unconditional positive regard. So if you go to your theory, just like, those three conditions kind of are some of the key concepts in person-centered theoretical orientation. You want to draw on some of the terms from your therapy model. So if you're Adlerian, in this section, I'd like to talk about your relation to the client in terms of like Adlerian psychology. So in individual psychology, the client, it's the therapist's is directive in terms of understanding the client's lifestyle. So they do lifestyle assessments using various, interventions in the session. And, you're kind of beside the client, but you're also, directive in terms of, okay, let's do a family constellation exercise today. Do you have any questions about kind of what you would put for relation? Okay, good. Let me see how this one is going. Okay, so in this client, we did have the consideration of, I'm going to say major depressive disorder and bipolar. So, we listed out the, okay, just sorry. So we just kind of listed out the behavioral things that we saw and then the criteria for each to try to differentiate. And I think I put it's got a brown cover and it's the differential diagnosis. So if you want to go into that, one thing in diagnosis is that we want to make sure we rule out other diagnoses that might, appear the same with some people. So, and yeah, if you need, if you want me to take a look and kind of work through that with you individually, or when we do supervision, or even when we're at intensive, I'll have some time to be able to meet with you separately if you want to.
Kelly,
Mhm.
at the site that I'm at, they don't diagnose because the issues coming in are acute trauma. So the layers of stuff that comes along with that. So do you want me to just kind of make an educated guess about some diagnostic factors with the person that I'm working with?
Um, I would probably, I'd rather see like the characteristics, the behavioral characteristics of what you're observing with the client. So I guess that's a yes in terms of your question. So under this one, you could say, characteristics or diagnostic characteristics, and that way, it doesn't lead to a diagnosis. And there's so much comorbidity to that, you know, and, sometimes within your theoretical view, you don't, the diagnosis is not necessary. So, yeah, and you can just say, yeah, so just leave it out. Okay, and then I had the assets kind of under assessments. And this was one that I kind of brought in from Naropa's, and just 4 or 5 sentences on the presenting concern expressed by your client using the theoretical orientation. You want to ask why this problem developed in the person's life. Are they responsible for it? Was there, social setting and environment? Is it something that they developed because of a gene passed down? Nikki, yours might be like intergenerational trauma that the person's been through. And so, like, people that are codependent often have boundary disturbances, lack of internal validation for self-esteem, um, just kind of the maintaining factors that keep the person isolated, lack of communication and low self-esteem. So that hypothesis that you're creating there is something about why and how people develop problems, and then how and why problems would be solved. And
Can you give an example of what those 4 or 5 sentences would look like?
yeah, sure.
I
So,
understand what you're talking about, but it'd kind of be nice to hear what an example of it would be.
okay, so for the client that we're working with in this conceptualization, I would say that, based on the presenting concern of being isolated, feeling unworthy of love, that, somewhere during her childhood, that she took those messages, kind of they became internal messages to herself. And now she relies on other people to validate her, and yet she experiences negative results, because, and we can say in person-centered, that she's not living her authentic life, that, the life that she's living isn't true to who she really is. So, yeah, is that helpful? Yeah, okay. So yeah, not anything, terribly profound. Um, and this is where you can kind of talk about greater systemic issues, if you want to talk about oppression, social justice, those kinds of things that might be impacting the client. So my client's isolated, she's living alone. Her extended family is 3 hours away. And, I think that on her description, you know, we could put in those factors that, in the addressing model, that she might be less privileged. So yeah, include the here areas that your client is privileged, and pay special attention to those that the client doesn't have privilege in. So low SES was one, being a female is one, age would be a positive, kind of a not, she's in a privileged area as a young person. I don't remember about race. I think she was white. So that's privilege. Yeah. So just kind of take special note of the ways in which they're not privileged. And then that might lead you, kind of back to that, the historical and cultural considerations that you might need to make. And then you can talk about development perspectives. So is there anything in terms of Erickson's theory, Kagan's model, Kohlberg's, any of those identity models that you'd like to bring in some information for? So if I had a student, a client that was, a freshman in college, and I was counseling at the counseling center, that developmentally is kind of a, a rite of passage, leaving home and coming to university. And there might be some specific things that the person is struggling with, like self-identity, where they fit in. If you're working with an older person, there might be concerns about that just generation. I'm trying to think of in career models, Super has that horrible disintegration, I think it's called. So just kind of think about those developed issues that might be impacting your client. And that's something that I feel like we don't do enough of. And as, that we know these theories, and that's part of our training is to really be able to apply those things to our clients and how they might be affecting them. Yeah, so yeah, we're not going to have to do that, and we're not going to have to do that one. And then here, your case conceptualization, you've like conceptualized your client, you've given me the interpretation or the hypothesis about what you think is going on. We've come up with maybe a diagnosis or some diagnostic characteristics. So now we can go into treatment planning. So for this person, the first goal for my client is for them to obtain necessary 12-step skills. So this was one that we didn't immediately work on because her presenting problem was not the alcohol. And so no, at this one too, one of the other things is this one's cited because we know that there's, some different treatments that we can do for things like substance abuse. So we want to be sure that we pick an intervention that's research-based. So this one's research-based. You could find other models of treatment or, goals for the client that are not based in a 12-step program. And, if I was doing this myself, I would have done something else there. So, and, at the end of this one, we decided to focus on the interpersonal issues and not on the, substance abuse. The substance abuse seemed like it was a coping skill. So just replacing that coping skill with something else. And we didn't, she didn't go to 12-step program.
So Shelley, are these goals in this treatment plan stuff that you collaborated with the client to come up with, or are these you're in your head about kind of how you want to work with your client?
These were collaborated with the client, except for this first goal. And if you have your treatment planner, yeah, so you can go through that and find different goals for the different behavioral characteristics your client has. The DSM diagnosis isn't until the last section. So, you can go ahead and just based off the behavioral characteristics that are in the first section. Yeah, under each problem or presenting problem, it says like substance abuse, the one I'm looking at, it has behavioral definitions. So up on that other slide where I was saying, put the behavioral characteristics of maybe a diagnosis that the client might have. And you can get those behavioral things from the treatment planning book. And you don't have to go to the end and diagnose, but you can get the characteristics kind of written out in a way that you might want to just kind of copy and paste, or you might want to come up with some of your own behavioral characteristics specific to your client. And then you can go to the goals and the outcomes, or the goals and the intervention, without ever having to, do a DSM diagnosis. Okay. And just a note here, we only had 2 in this treatment plan, but we want 3 goals, 2 objectives, and 2 interventions. So, in substance abuse, you can have like a long-term goal and then have kind of your short-term goals under that. And that's usually how I write my goals, is that I have like a overarching goal, for in terms of person-centered counseling, for the client to become more self-aware and, live a more satisfying life. And then my, kind of short-term goals would be like participating weekly in talk therapy. It might be building their self-awareness by, person-centered is hard because you don't, in coming up with the goals for the client, even coming up with goals, we don't really do that. So, and for my kids that I work with in play therapy, my goals would be, the child would express 3 feelings that would be baseline, and then by the end of 6 weeks, the child client could identify 10 different feelings and exhibit those in the playroom over a course of the 6 weeks.
Shelley, when you say 2 objective, what does that mean? Can you give an example of that, please?
Yeah, 3. I'm going to put 3 short-term goals. So a short-term goal could be like confirm and address chemical dependency as a family issue. So that would be one of my short-term goals. And then to address that, I would say, I want to find something to do with, okay, it might be this one here, agree to make amends to significant others who have been hurt by the life dominated by substance abuse. And so that would be my objective. And then my 2 interventions would come in that last column of the treatment manual. So my intervention is going to be discuss negative effects the client's substance abuse had hurt the family, the effect that the substance abuse had on friends, family, and work. So that would be something that I would observe in the session by talking to the client, that they'd be able to, look and tell me what happens as a result of their substance abuse in their family.
So were you saying that for each goal, we have to have 2 objectives and 2 interventions?
Okay, listen. Okay,
I'm sorry, I'm just a. I'm
no, that's okay.
confused.
Yeah, so if you had one goal, see the way the treatment manual is written, I was trying to stay with that. Do you have one out?
Are you talking about this, the planner?
Yeah, if you want to take a look at that and let me know what chapter you're in.
Jen, I mean, I don't want to take away from you, but I know that a lot of what my folks are dealing with is PTSD. But Jen, if you have something else you want to bring in.
Yeah, I think my treatment will be trauma informed for my client also. So we could go there. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and I have the adolescent manual.
It's page 343, Shelley, from where I'm looking.
Yeah, and I have the adolescent one, but it'll be
Okay.
fine. to work through. So we've got the behavioral definitions.
Oh, there they all are.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Sorry. I don't think I've cracked this book open a whole lot during the semester because I haven't really known what to do with it.
Yeah,
But
well, I
listed
think,
there, long-term goals and
Yeah.
short-term goals with the
Yeah.
therapeutic objectives
yeah.
and
So
interventions.
the behavioral, characteristics are going to be someplace up in here, wherever it is, where, I said that you could behaviorally, yeah, so in that diagnosis, you could put some of those behavioral definitions there. So lack of interest in participating in formally meaningful activities. There's a sleep disturbance, hypervigilance, startle response. So those are all characteristics or behavioral definitions that we can use for PTSD. And then we look at the long-term goals. So my long-term goal, the first one here, I have recall the traumatic events without becoming overwhelmed with negative emotions. And
So
then
for our presentation, do you want long and short-term goals or?
I want your long-term goal to be, like here. I want your Let me see. Where can I do this? Okay. Let me see.
So we'll have 3 short-term goals and 1 long-term.
And then, yeah, see, I just say 2 objectives and 2 interventions. So I want your interventions to be research-based. So yeah, like the long-term goal. And then 2 objectives and 2 interventions.
So the objectives are the short-term goals.
What's that again, Jen? My dog was barking.
So there's a long-term goal, and then would it be safe to say that the 2 objectives are 2 short-term goals to meet the long-term goal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And, the language, I think is difficult because we think of goals, objectives, and interventions, but they're wanting us to do like these short-term objectives to me are goals. And then the last, on the right-hand side, those are the interventions.
So I'm still feeling a little bit unclear about this. Jen, if you get it, can you explain it to me? Or so we don't need to have 3 short-term goals. We need 1 long-term goal with 2 objectives that are short-term goals.
Yeah.
And then 2 interventions for the long-term goal or
You'll have
interventions for the short-term goals as
2
well.
interventions for each short Sure. Okay. I'm having so much trouble with short term. They call them.
Interventions for each objective. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 objectives that they're going to call short term, and are the 2 short term objectives, and 2 intervention for each short term objective, and 1 research based. So the way that if we wanted to do for the long-term goal is recall the traumatic event without being overwhelmed. So I am going to choose okay, if I'm a CBT therapist, mine is number 14, but yours might be different. My 14 says identify, challenge, and replace fearful self-talk with reality-based positive self-talk.
Where are you looking, Shelley? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have the
Oh,
adolescent.
you have the adolescent book. Okay.
Yeah, so because my long-term goal there is to recall the traumatic event without being overwhelmed, one of the things I might want my client to do is be able to replace self-talk as it comes up when they're relating the story to me with reality-based positive self-talk. Because I think that's I need to do that before I have them retell the event. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's number 22 on ours.
On the adult, okay, yeah. And then the interventions that are marked, I have to always go to my back. Those little character, the little notes or whatever, they're like triangles and stuff. It, I was really upset about that. Those are so hard to find. Okay, I see what we can. Okay, so sample treatment plan needs there. No. Cultivate. Yeah, you guys, did you see where it defined that? If you look closely at the triangles that are under, I need my, that are under, like next to the short-term objective, I believe there's letters in there. So EBT, so it's an effective based treatment. It's an upside down triangle.
Right, yeah.
Yes, it says EBT. I cannot read that. And so those are ones that you could use because they're based on research. And then I want you to kind of go the extra step of finding that article that is part of the research-based treatment in his bibliotherapy or reference pages. So try to match the, like on this one, he's talking about assigning problem-solving exercise or becoming assertive in the adolescent psychology homework planner. So I would use that as a reference. And so in those interventions, lots of times he identifies the evidence-based treatment there. And other times there's not any evidence-based treatment, but I think he usually has one for at least, I mean, I would hope that there's something there for each one.
Shelley, I'm just trying to find, for example, I'm looking in this post-traumatic stress disorder chapter, just trying to find the article in the back.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not finding it when I go under post-traumatic stress disorder and look for the referenced article. I don't know how to find it. I would have to probably go through, it looks like all of the pages to see what particular
Yeah, and
place.
easier, yeah, easier way to do that would be, what is the, what does it say where the evidence-based treatment is? Is it an intervention?
Yeah, it's under the therapeutic interventions on page 345. It says, see psychotherapy relationships that work, volume 1 by Norcross and Lambert, and volume 2 by Norcross and Wamfold.
Okay,
And
yeah.
under,
So he probably, Norcross and his friend there, that's a pretty popular reference. So, I mean, he should have it in the back someplace here, but if you're not seeing it, I would just Google that reference
okay,
and find it. That's what Norcross is really.
so we need to include those references in
Um,
our presentation.
yeah, just one research based, and I'll say and provide. Okay, so is the treatment manual now a little bit more, is easily understood? Yeah, okay. And yeah, bring them with you. I hate, yeah, that we have to bring them. If you have it online, we could always, I'm trying to see if I've got it online. What's his name? Jackson. Yeah, I'll see if I can find it online and then, we can pull it up on the screen and stuff at intensive,
I
or
think
you could,
Yeah, sorry. I
yeah,
think
go.
someone shared it from last cohort on our Slack channel.
Okay, somebody posted it. Good, good.
What did someone post?
The digital version of this.
Oh,
Choki posted it a while ago. It's under practicum. I have it too.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, Jen, would you mind sending it to me too?
I was
I don't,
just thinking about how could I do that? Yep, I'll send it to you. Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Mhm.
And that way we won't have to lug around books.
Yes,
Okay.
but this is big.
Yeah, yeah, and they're heavy.
Really, while we have a moment, I'm
Mhm.
finding myself struggling a little bit still with this,
With a man.
with the theory, like I feel like the theory I want to go with my client with is mostly like trauma informed, IFS, maybe some more experiential. Is experiential a theory considered like a theory you're working from? Because I've seen that written in some places. I just wouldn't know how to describe my theory if I want to do IFS and trauma informed work. Like,
Yeah, you could use the two in terms of describing your client in the PowerPoint, and the trauma informed treatment and then internal family systems. Do you feel like you're defining the client in terms of IFS, or are you using trauma-informed care also to define the issue?
Well, I haven't gotten very far with her. I've only done like the front loading with her before I did any parts work, because I want to do parts work, whether it's Gestalt, IFS, Takumi, all of those. Like, what do I call them?
Yeah.
Existential,
Um,
experiential.
they're experiential. We don't really interrelational. Yeah. Um, and like researching, have you seen anything that combines the two? No.
Well, I feel like IFS does the front loading. The IFS is trauma informed. So front loading is part of that with the resourcing.
Yeah.
But I do find that I keep thinking about I want to get to this point in time with her and get to these parts that split.
Yeah.
But they're not developmental. They're not like from parenthood, it's from school age. So
Mm.
I guess it's like could be trauma. So that's why I wanted to front load.
Yeah. With
So
IFS
I
and then,
think I guess IFS does combine trauma informed practices with parts work.
yeah.
That's why it's a trauma treatment.
Yeah.
Okay, I answered my
Yeah.
question.
So good. Okay. You're talking it out. You
Yeah.
see the trauma part there too. Good. Good.
Okay. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I can say
You,
IFS.
you did it yourself.
I guess I was just saying, do I say IFS or do I use a broader umbrella term for whatever IFS might fall under?
I would use IFS and
Okay.
just get used to using those terms within that model. Trauma-informed care would use different terms and maybe seek out kind of interventions that are different from IFS. So, yeah, if you wanted to, yeah, more, like interpret your client's behavior and how you're going to approach it in IFS, does that, can you do that, I guess? Is that something, I'm not so familiar with
Yeah.
IFS.
I guess I mix IFS and Gestalt and Hakomi and that NARM. I mix them all together in my mind at this point.
Yeah,
They're all
and
based off Gestalt basically though. But
yeah,
now newer forms are more relational and more trauma informed.
yeah. And at this point, in practicum, you're just now kind of applying theory. So, being somewhat unclear, is totally normal. And for you to explore, kind of, okay, an intervention, a Gestalt intervention is this, but I could do it as, trauma informed
Yeah,
intervention too.
that's
So
what I'm going. Yeah.
yeah, and so if you're going to talk from one theory, even if it's something that we'd use in Gestalt and in terms in IFS, that because you're working with trauma and you want that to kind of be your overarching theory, you're going to draw those interventions from different theories, but your main theory will have their own jargon around that intervention. So it kind of might be the same intervention as a Gestalt intervention, but in your theory, it might but be defined in another way.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. Oh, let's see.
And then at one point you skipped over the DSM diagnosis slide. Are you not wanting us to do that slide now?
Well, if you can, that would be great. And, using your treatment manual, if you go to the end of the chapter on PTSD, and don't get caught up in the first top of the diagnosis page is DSM-4. And so look down below in the middle, it says DSM-5.
Okay.
And so we can, you can take a stab at any of those if you'd like to. And yeah, and if your assessments from your agency that you're working with has a diagnosis, you can put that one down. And then if you think there's something missing or that it's, your client's misdiagnosed, go ahead and, work through that and make sure that they're the right ones.
Okay.
Yeah, so in differential diagnosis, we would go to the page where it's PTSD, and then there's the trees that you go through to eliminate things that it could be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of beyond practicum and more in diagnosis or, when you're on the job training, if you don't have it already. But if you wanted to, we can look at that.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm not expected to, my clients don't have insurance, so I don't have to diagnose.
Okay.
But I still want to get into the practice of just
Yeah.
thinking like that.
Yeah, and again, we've got that electronically, so that's something that, in our group we can pull up and look at. Just kind of,
Yeah, I like the tree. I use the tree. I use the tree more than I use the DSM.
yeah, yeah.
Where do you get the tree?
It's in, yeah. Shelley posted it. It's a differential, what is it called? Differential
Yeah,
diagnostic.
differential diagnostic. Do you have it, Nikki, or did I?
I don't have it offhand. I may have it somewhere, but
Yeah, it's probably in the source book page. But
Um, I might have emailed it to you through the classroom though. And Nikki, I'll just send it to you again.
yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I know how my files sometimes so out of whack. Okay, and I've got to finish up in a few minutes. Let me see. I thought I had a 10 o'clock, but and for some reason my calendars aren't syncing today. Yeah, okay, it's tomorrow, 10 o'clock, so we're good. Are you guys okay on time? Or? Okay. We'll try to wrap up about 10:30 then. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I was going with, my goal. And then my integration of theory here. And again, this is kind of written out word for word, but you can just use bullet points here. And, this can be, lifted or, edited right from, what person centered theory, how they see the client. And let's see, I might go ahead and just kind of revise where these are so it's not so confusing. So then I just continued with theory. And you don't have to have as many. And I think I've repeated one of those. So I'll kind of clean this up so it's not such a long thing here. Okay, so then your plans would be next. Let me see. And so she was struggling with having her own agenda and wanting to be staying with the client and doing some research on codependency. And then prognosis, we used to have that. We used to have it in the DSM, but do you guys know if it's in the DSM still? Oh, jeez. Yeah, I stopped looking at it because I was so upset.
It looks like there are some places that have risk and prognostic factors,
Yeah,
but I don't see a general
progress.
prognosis. Risk and prognostic factors is what I'm seeing in some.
Yeah, so you could put those down then. Yeah. Yeah, that would make sense. And then if you'll just list a couple of questions here that you'd like to ask the class about. It might be something, specifically in regard to what you might do with the client next. Or it might be, just something that we've talked about that you'd like more info on. And this is an assignment that I have my students do when we're in person. Okay, so, and these were some of the things from our PowerPoint that's in the classroom. And just kind of questions to ask yourself as you're building the conceptualization. And then the Many Moons book I had there. Okay, and just her description. Okay, and so within that theory of person-centered, like the king had called all those different people to help her, but really within her was where the problem, where the problem was solved, because she came up with the idea that if you brought her the little thing that looks like a moon, she would have the moon. And so even though all these experts tried to solve that problem, they couldn't. And so that kind of illustrates my conceptualization of her. And, we might say, that she had some anxiety, she wasn't sleeping well. So those kinds of things. And yeah, I decided not to do the whole thing because it was not very much information. But again, acids, hypothesis. Okay, and DSM treatment goals. Okay, and prognosis, and then your conclusion. Yeah. And so this one was, I just gave you the example of one. So if you want to draw out your office, it's fine. Why can't I go more? Okay, so her referring problem was there, previous there. 14-year-old, court-ordered to come to counseling, charged with burglary. And then she did, family background, hobbies, mental health there. And he did have some diagnosis and he was on medicine. So if you know that, educational and legal history was pertinent there. And disruptive mood dysregulation disorder is the one that she was um, basing it off to, or bipolar. So characteristically, these were factors. So he showed irritability. The age, it was before 18. He had psychotropic symptoms, rarely or can be present, comorbidity, prognosis, and specific outbursts. So with those two kind of being compared, I'd want to go to my to the differential diagnosis, but she was differentiating bipolar because it came up that, well, maybe we're looking at bipolar and not DMDD. So at this point, I had students kind of draw their conceptualization of their client from when they first met them to treatment until, if kind of foreseeing in the future what the client might look like or what might be going on with a client. So, there's different interpretations that you can do. And, just kind of to see the treatment, the red, you think of anger, blue was kind of the working area. Blue is also a symbol of trust. And then the colorful drawing at the end there. So I was going to put that into kind of the requirements that you do something kind of using expressive arts to describe or illustrate the stages of, your progression with the client that you're working with. And then she had goals for GMDD, for the probation, and for impulsivity. And so these were the objectives in this case. And then these are actually, this is the goal, and then these are the objectives. And did she do? Okay. And then just references. There. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing and
So Shelley, did you want us to include some kind of expressive art piece in this presentation about what our experience has been with our client, or?
yeah, if you would like to, I'll give you another something else. And actually what this one was actually artwork from her client. If you're going to share artwork from your client, make sure that you have permission to share that, because it's, it's different from taping. It's an actual, artifact that they've made. So just like a counseling note, you wouldn't share that without permission. Don't share pictures or artifacts that you've done. So yeah, I'll add that into our directions and go back through that PowerPoint. So it will include where you could fit the expressive arts activity in. I'm going to clean up that theory part. And I'm going to send you, Nikki, the differential diagnosis.
I'm feeling some caretaking happening towards our other students in our class who didn't show up for this. And I'm wondering how they are going to get the information of the pieces that they need to include in this without Jen and I feeling like we need to inform the class.
I'm recording this, so I was going to put the recording in both of the classrooms. And next week, well, we're meeting tonight. So my class, we can, I'll post it for them, and then I'm trying to think if we meet again before intensive. I don't think we do. No. So I'll encourage everyone to do that, to watch the video,
Or
and
even just sending out that conceptualization we worked with today
yeah,
that you were editing. I guess sending that out would be helpful so that we could use that as a template.
yeah, great. Yeah, I
Maybe.
can do that. And they'll have the video of, the whole time that we spent together so they can see that PowerPoint. But I'm also going to make another one and just clean that one up a little bit. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah. And I think instead of taking up time in class going over that, I might, maybe people could stay late or something and we could do that. Yeah. If anyone has specific questions, yeah. Yeah, because I don't want you guys to feel like you have to educate the classes. Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine to let people know what we learned, but it seemed like there was stuff on here that's really helpful for me
Yeah.
taking this and going to start doing more work on my conceptualization. This really helped to flesh it out a little bit for me.
Yeah, good, good. Okay, yeah, so I'll do that, and yeah, I'm glad that you guys joined me this morning. The other one, I just canceled because nobody came, and so that's why I recorded this one. So, okay, well, thank you both again, and I'm gonna let you go and get started on my day. And I hope that you have a good day, and I'll see you tonight then. Okay, okay, bye-bye.
Enjoy your time with your daughter, Shelley.
Yeah, thank you. Okay,
Welcome.
bye.
Good to see you, Jen.
Bye.